High upon the jagged cliffs rising from the deep blue Mediterranean waters stood Santa Barbara Castle. For centuries, its thick granite walls had served as a silent guardian, watching over the coast and protecting the town below. Built to be unbreakable, with tall towers, battlements, and iron-reinforced gates, the fortress was a masterpiece of defense. The people looked up at it with pride, knowing that as long as the flag flew above the highest tower, they were safe from every danger coming from the sea. But the ocean hid many secrets and dangers. The most feared of all were the Brotherhood of the Black Sail, led by the ruthless captain Silas Vane. He was a man whose name made sailors tremble, commanding the Shadow Leviathan, a dark and fast ship crewed by thieves and warriors. Vane had heard the legends about Santa Barbara. Deep inside its vaults lay an ancient treasure: gold, silver, jewels, and artifacts collected over generations, enough wealth to buy kingdoms. Most men thought attacking such a stronghold was madness, but Vane was obsessed. He believed no wall was truly unbreakable and that courage and surprise could conquer anything. Everything changed on a night when the moon was hidden and a thick, cold mist covered the water like a gray blanket. The air was heavy and silent. Captain Marcus, the commander of the castle, stood on the western tower, looking out into the fog. He was an experienced soldier and felt a strange uneasiness. "Evil things travel best in the dark," he often said. He ordered all guards to be extra vigilant, torches lit, and gates secured. Far out in the mist, 5 dark ships moved silently, without flags or lights. At the front sailed Vane's vessel. He stood at the bow, staring toward the glowing lights of the castle high above. For weeks, he had studied the tides, the winds, and the patrol routes using spies in the town. He knew exactly where the walls were steepest and least guarded, the northern cliffs. "Prepare the boats," Vane commanded his huge first mate, Rook. "We climb where they think no one can come. While they watch the main gates, we come from the side like ghosts. Tonight, we take the treasure." Back at the castle, the first warning came from the silence itself. Then, a guard spotted dark shadows moving rapidly up the rocks. Before he could sound the alarm, metal claws of grappling hooks bit deep into the stone walls. Dozens of figures began climbing with the speed of spiders. "To arms! Pirates are scaling the walls," Marcus shouted, drawing his sword. Drums beat rapidly, and soldiers rushed to their posts. Arrows were fired down into the mist, but more and more attackers appeared. Through the fog, Marcus saw the full fleet anchored below. This was not a small raid, it was a full invasion. The battle for Santa Barbara Castle had begun, and the fate of the fortress and its legendary treasure hung in the balance. The night shattered into chaos. The air filled with terrifying sounds: war cries, shouting, the clash of steel, and the loud ring of metal hitting stone. The pirates were a wild sight: ragged clothes, scarred faces, masks, curved swords, and heavy axes. They fought not with discipline, but with a savage energy that made them seem like a force of nature. Driven by greed and the promise of gold, they climbed higher and higher, ignoring the arrows and stones falling upon them. Captain Marcus directed the defense from the highest point. "Hold the line. Do not let them step 1 foot past these stones," he roared. He knew their only chance was to keep them off the walls. If the pirates gained a foothold inside, the castle would be lost. But Silas Vane was among the first to reach the battlements. With a powerful swing, he pulled himself over the edge, landing heavily on the stone walkway. He cut down 2 guards instantly, clearing a path for his crew. More pirates poured over the walls, cheering wildly. The fighting became close and brutal. There was no room to retreat, only to fight or die. Marcus realized the northern section was the main target. Vane had chosen perfectly, using the steep cliffs that were thought to be a protection as his main entrance. Marcus gathered his best men and rushed to the breach. He saw Vane standing tall in the middle of the fight, directing his men with deadly skill. Marcus knew that defeating the captain was the only way to stop the attack. "Vile thief, you will not win while I live," Marcus challenged, charging forward. Vane turned, laughing coldly. "You are a fool to think you can stop me. I have taken places greater than this pile of rocks. Step aside, and I might let you live." Their swords met in a shower of sparks. It was a duel between 2 different worlds. Marcus, trained and honorable, fighting for duty and home. Vane, wild and dangerous, fighting for everything he desired. They circled each other on the narrow ledge, surrounded by death and fire. Vayne fought with tricks and unpredictable strikes, while Marcus relied on skill and defense. Neither could gain the upper hand. Meanwhile, Rook, the massive first mate, led a group toward the main gates. With incredible strength, he smashed down barriers and doors. The defenders were pushed back step by step, retreating deeper into the fortress toward the Great Keep, the inner stronghold, the last line of defense. Fires began to burn where torches had fallen or oil spilled. Smoke rose thick and black, stinging eyes and covering the battlefield. Marcus saw his men falling back and the flames spreading. He parried a heavy blow from Vayne and shouted orders. Retreat to the keep. Hold the inner gate. We make our stand there. He blocked one last strike and fought his way backward, covering the retreat. Vayne did not chase. He stood panting, wiping blood from his face, looking at the ground he had conquered. He raised his sword high against the burning sky. The courtyard was now a scene of ruin and smoke. Silas Vayne walked through the debris, looking up at the great keep with a mix of frustration and respect. This structure was different. Its walls were twice as thick, its towers taller, and its main gate was made of solid iron plates bolted onto heavy oak. It was designed to hold out for months without help. The narrow path leading to it was exposed on all sides, a killing ground overlooked by archers high above. Vayne knew they had to break in before sunrise. Once daylight came, villagers would signal the Royal Navy, and warships would arrive to cut off their escape. Bring the rams and shields, he ordered, and find barrels of pitch or oil. Iron can break, but it also melts if you feed it enough fire. Inside the keep, Captain Marcus stood at the window, watching. He counted his men. Fewer than 100 remained, many wounded. But morale was high. They had retreated, yes, but they had not surrendered. They think they have won because they stand in our courtyard, Marcus told his officers calmly. But they do not understand what this castle is. These stones have stood for 1,000 years and will stand 1,000 more. Every step they take toward us will be paid for in blood. When the pirates began their advance, they moved under large shields, forming a moving wall. Behind them came 20 strong men carrying a massive tree trunk as a battering ram. Others carried torches and pots of burning oil. Marcus gave the signal. Fire at will. Instantly, arrows, heavy stones, and boiling oil rained down. The air filled with screams and the smell of burning flesh. Men fell, but the rest stepped over them, driven by greed and fear of their own officers. They reached the gate and began to strike it. Clang, clang. The sound echoed through the entire fortress. It was terrifying, shaking the foundations, but the iron gate held firm. Vayne watched impatiently. The ram was not enough. He looked around and saw the wooden storage buildings near the walls. A dangerous idea formed in his mind. Tear down those structures, he shouted. Pile everything in front of the gate. Timber, hay, cloth, anything that burns. Bring gunpowder barrels from the ships. If we cannot break the iron, we will heat it until it bends, or they choke on the smoke. It was a desperate plan, but it was their only chance. They built a huge mound reaching halfway up the doors, surrounded by oil and tar. Vayne took a torch and looked up at Marcus. Surrender and live, or burn inside, he called out. Marcus looked down, his face hard as stone. Stone does not burn, pirate. Light your fire. We have water enough to fill the sea. You will break before we do. So be it. Vayne threw the torch. Flames roared upward instantly, turning night into blinding day. The heat was intense, radiating outward so hot that soldiers near the windows had to retreat. Smoke billowed up, thick and choking, drifting into ventilation shafts. The fire raged like a living thing, turning the space before the keep into a blazing furnace. Flames licked high, and the heat was unbearable. Stone that had been cold for centuries became hot to the touch. Inside, the defenders were forced to move upward to the higher levels, carrying buckets of water from deep cisterns to pour over the walls and cool the glowing metal. The hissing sound of water hitting hot iron was continuous and loud. Captain Marcus wiped sweat and ash from his face. The situation was critical. Smoke crept higher, finding every crack and vent. But he knew Vayne was not just trying to burn them out. He was using the fire as a cover. When the flames died down and the smoke became thickest, That was when the real attack would come. Outside, Vane stood with his best men, covered in soot and looking like demons. He watched the fire fade, leaving the gate twisted and weakened. "The iron is soft now," he said to Rook. "We strike again. You take the front with a stronger ram. I will take the best climbers and go up the side where the smoke hides us. They will be watching the gate, not the walls." As the embers glowed red, the pirates moved. Rook and his team charged forward, shouting loud war cries. The defenders, thinking the danger had passed, were caught off guard. Arrows flew blindly through the smoke. Rook's men smashed the heavy ram against the weakened iron. Crack! This time, the sound was different. Not a ring, but a tear. The heat had done its work. The plating split, hinges snapped, and the great iron gate sagged inward, hanging crookedly open. At the same moment, Vane and his elite team scaled the western wall, hidden by darkness and smoke. They pulled themselves onto a lower balcony, finding it almost unguarded. They drew their swords and rushed inside, screaming, cutting down the startled guards. Now the battle was within the sacred halls of the keep itself. The fighting moved to narrow corridors and chambers. It was dark, confusing, and brutal. Rooms used for peace became slaughterhouses. Marcus heard the shouts from the rear and realized they had been flanked. "Block the stairs. Do not let them reach the vaults," he yelled, rushing toward the sound of fighting. He saw Vane ahead, kicking open the heavy door leading to the central staircase, the only path up to the treasure hidden beneath the tower. They faced each other again, surrounded by swirling smoke and fallen men. "We meet at last, at the top," Vane grinned, breathless. "You fought well, Captain, but the gold is mine. Nothing stands between me and it now." Marcus raised his heavy sword, tired and bleeding. He looked at the pirate crew pushing closer. He knew he could not win by strength alone. He had to use the castle's secrets. "You think gold is the only treasure here?" Marcus asked hoarsely. "You think we built this just to hold coins? This fortress has defenses you cannot imagine." The first light of dawn spread over the sea, turning the dark blue water into purple and gold. It revealed the true cost of the night: scarred cliffs, damaged walls, debris everywhere, and the smell of smoke hanging heavy in the air. Santa Barbara Castle stood battered and scorched, but still standing tall against the sky. Inside the keep, the situation was clear for both sides. Captain Silas Vane and 50 of his best men were trapped in the lower sections and courtyard. They had breached the legendary walls, something no one had done in centuries, but they had failed. The treasure was still hidden above, blocked by tons of stone and guarded by determined soldiers. Worse than that, daylight brought a new enemy. From a broken window, Vane looked out and saw white sails appearing on the horizon. The Royal Navy galleys were coming fast, alerted by villagers who had watched the battle all night and lit warning fires on the hills. They blocked the only escape route, the sea. Rook wiped blood from his face and looked at his captain. "We are trapped. We took the walls, we took the gate, but no gold. And now nowhere to run. What now?" Vane looked at his men, tired, wounded, low on ammunition. He looked at the rising sun and then back toward the blocked stairs where the gold lay just out of reach. For a moment, greed fought with survival instinct inside him. He had come so far, but he was a captain, and he knew when a gamble was lost. "We did what no man ever dared," Vane said slowly, sheathing his sword. "We climbed these cliffs. We broke these walls. We fought the best soldiers and stood in their halls. That is a victory in itself, even without the gold." He turned away from the treasure room. "We go back the way we came. Take what small loot we found in the stores and leave. We live to sail another day. This gold is cursed anyway." Back in the upper chambers, Captain Marcus leaned against a pillar, exhausted beyond belief. He was covered in dust, his uniform was rags, and his arm felt like lead. But he smiled when a lookout shouted from the tower, "Captain, they are retreating. The pirates are climbing back down to their boats." Marcus walked to the window and looked down. He saw the dark figures moving fast across the open ground, carrying their wounded and their small spoils. He saw Silas Vane pause at the edge of the cliff, turn back to look at the castle one last time with hatred and respect, and then vanish into the mist. Marcus let out a breath he felt he had held all night and slid down to sit on the floor. "They are gone. We helped." His lieutenant came over, limping but happy. "The treasure is safe, Captain." Marcus shook his head, looking at the damage around him. Gold is just metal and stones. The real treasure is this castle and the men who defend it. Tonight we proved that courage is stronger than any sword or fire. Tonight, we became part of the legend ourselves. By mid-morning, the Royal Navy arrived, and soldiers marched up from the town. They expected to find ruins and defeat. Instead, they found Santa Barbara standing proud, the flag flying high. The people cheered, amazed that their protector had survived such an assault. Silas Vane sailed away, never to return. His story became famous among sailors. The man who tried to take the unbreakable castle and failed. The scars on the walls were left visible forever, as a reminder. For centuries after, grandfathers pointed to the cliffs and told their children, "Do not fear the waves or the dark." Santa Barbara Castle stands there. It stood against pirates, fire, and steel. It has watched over us for 1,000 years, and it will watch over us forever. The end.